To be honest, when I kept hearing the word Puritan related to Gen Z, I was like, why are we going back to the 1600s? I'm not white and I'm not a Protestant. But anywho, stay with me. I just have an observational think piece, so take everything that I say with a grain of salt. To begin, think how many students say, I did everything right. I went to school, I went to college, I completed my internships, I networked, I checked every single box, and now my reward is a collapsing economy? That feeling of being punished for following the rules reflects what I like to call our puritanical socialization, a system that starts shaping the moment that we're socialized. There's even research showing that the Western school system is designed not to cultivate free thinkers, but to mold obedient workers. It emphasizes punctuality, docility, and sobriety, qualities necessary for factory labor, while simultaneously reinforcing the illusion that each student is quote-unquote still an individual of their own. By contrast, the wealthy have always had access to education that allows them to move freely and hone the skills tied to leadership, persuasion, confidence, adaptability, and my favorite, exploitation. Anyways, this creates what we might call the rich get richer effect in education. We've internalized this Puritan legacy because most of us grew up under the factory worker model. Meanwhile, the top 1% comfortably hoard taxpayer money while we remain trapped in a mob mentality, one that often manifests as cancel culture, where peers police each other's behavior instead of confronting structural inequality. The quality of education today still depends on where you go, of course. Yet, what remains consistent is the pressure to master social cues in the unspoken language of your peers. Ironically, we Gen Z are more educated than ever, yet also we're more vulnerable to propaganda. In fact, we're becoming more extremist than ever, with public discourse often reduced to expressions of hate or threats of violence. This climate produces another paradox, the need to over-explain ourselves in order to avoid offending anyone. What might have been authentic conversation, opportunities to disagree, debate, or learn often become stifled. Instead, we conform to whatever version of purity a culture demands in order to be accepted. The consequences of this dynamic are not trivial. History shows us that wars have been sparked not only by deliberate conflict, but also by a lack of understanding, or at the very least, a lack of respect for perspectives that not threaten us directly. Today, the erosion of nuance combined with the rise of parasocial relationships on the internet only magnifies this vulnerability. A great example of this is in activism. As I mentioned in an earlier video, we reduced politics to a rigid binary of good versus evil, leaving no room for complexity or contradiction. All of this brings me to one point. Striving to be a good person is not a weakness. Nevertheless, life is complicated, and many choices will make you feel like you're in a lose-lose situation. What matters is not the perfection, but how you respond and how you continue to move forward. You cannot stop living simply because suffering for the others exists. Awareness is vital, yes, but no individual can transform the world alone. What you can do can be meaningful in smaller ways, building community, educating yourself, and nurturing real relationships, or living.
My activism hot take is that you have to actually develop social skills in order to be a good activist, and that displaying your suffering the most doesn't mean that you're doing the most work. But you sitting at home alone and self-flagellating for being a privileged American with what's going on abroad is not doing anything to help the Palestinian people, and it's not helping you be a better organizer. Sitting at home and witnessing suffering by yourself and processing that alone is not going to help anybody. Being in community and building those relationships so that you can have those hard conversations to organize for Palestinian people is going to help you. And it's going to help you sustain the energy and joy that is required to do this work for decades to come.
A puritanical mindset insists on moral perfection and self-denial, trapping us in guilt instead of growth. True resilience requires rejecting that rigidity and embracing complexity, or in other words, nuance. Ayada out.